Welcome everybody, my name is Christian and today I'm going to talk about War of the Ring, the Lord of the Rings board game, and today I'm going to give some tips, tricks, and battle tactics for the shadow side, the evil side of the Lord of the Rings. And they're a lot of fun to play as well. I think I prefer the Fellowship just because I kind of like having these cards are a lot more they're a lot more usable for the free people. You can have a lot more interesting tricks, while with the evil side, it's much more straightforward. You want to kill as much as possible. You want to destroy as much as possible and do it as quick as possible before the Fellowship gets to the ring. Now, you don't want to start your game out initially saying, I'm only going to win by victory points or I'm only going to win by corruption, because the free peoples will be able to adjust their strategy off of how you're allocating your dice and what you're focusing on. You really need to pursue both, and then when it's getting near the end and you think you're going to win one way or the other, maybe focus a little bit more. But in the beginning, you want to put a lot of pressure on the free people and start attacking, because that's going to give them more incentive to split up the Fellowship in order to have them help out in the military battles. And if they're out of the Fellowship, they're not going to take that corruption damage that you want to be issuing them. So the free people they have the defensive military game, and so you need to be as aggressive as possible. And I would recommend moving Isengard to war first, because by moving Isengard into war, you get to bring Sauron the White into play, in which all you need to do is have Isengard at war and then use a muster. And then you get to put Isengard in Orthanc, and you get an extra die for the rest of the game, and he has a particularly useful mustering ability as well. He allows warg riders to be leaders as well as elite units. So he should be the very first minion that you bring into the field. In terms of who to attack first, I found it useful to attack Osgiliath and maybe get Minas Tirith into siege as early as possible before they can really reinforce. Plus, if you take out Gondor early on, they won't be able to crown Aragorn as king, because Aragorn has to be crowned in a Gondor city that is under their control. So by taking the pressure onto Gondor, and particularly taking Minas Tirith, which would be it could be a much longer path to get to these other two, unless there's a card. By taking Minas Tirith early on, you could be depriving the free people of a dice. So move troops from into Ithilien and take Osgiliath as soon as you can before they reinforce it, and then maybe go ahead and try to put Minas Tirith into siege. Maybe not press the attack, but by putting them into siege, they won't be able to muster within that area. Something that everyone should keep in mind, free people and shadow players alike, is that the Nazgûl are very useful. They can move around. One character action die allows you to move all the Nazgûl on the board to anywhere. And by having a Nazgûl on the last known position of the ring bearer allows you to do a reroll whenever they leave further from that area, so that's useful. They act as leader abilities, so having them move around from front line to front line, and that essentially gives you a chunk of a 5 reroll that you can just move from place to place where you need it. Go ahead and try to muster the rest of the Nazgûl. You only start out with a few, and go ahead and max those out early on. Now, bringing in the Witch King has one small downside of activating all of the free peoples. If you have a certain card that you can play on the board that prevents certain nations from going to war, like the threats and promises, maybe you want to hold off on the Witch King. But as soon as a free people's nation is at war, you may want to go ahead and bring in the Witch King, even though it activates everyone. Giving you that extra die and his own abilities is probably worth it. When you're attacking a city or a settlement, it really doesn't matter the number of elites you have. Just try your best to have significantly more troops than your enemy. However, when you take a stronghold and you start the battle, make sure you load up on elites. If you don't think you have enough to continue the siege until the number of rounds you expect to kill all their troops, you may want to keep them locked up in the siege and bring in reinforcements, because they only get the advantage of you having to roll a 6 in their first round. Once you start the battle, you just want to keep on hammering them away until they're gone. You don't want to attack a few rounds, allow them to maybe move one of their armies around to help them, or use a card ability. You want to press the attack until they're all dead. Very ruthless, but that's the way to do it. And also, whenever you're attacking the same fortification twice, you're using up another dice that you could be moving or attacking an army elsewhere. So there's certain times where you really want to load up in a ring box. When you know that they could be passing through Moria. So the Fellowship starts at Rivendell. When they're 2 away and they're trying to get a 3rd or a 4th, that's when you really want to add more dice into the ring box and increases your chances of being discovered. Because if you can discover them in Moria, not only going to get a tile that turn, but when they try to leave, they're going to get another tile. So that's really when you can cause some damage and maybe kill some of those companions early on. The same goes when you know that they're going to be passing through either the Black Gate or through Minas Morgul. Hopefully you have them revealed, but by just using math, just try to keep track of where the Fellowship could be, and when they're going to be moving into this area, go ahead and put more dice than you normally would. Maybe they won't even move at all this turn, but that's not really all that much of a problem, because it allows you to use all the other dice to attack, even if you're sacrificing 4 or 5 dice into the hunt for the ring box. By keeping them away, you still get to use the other ones, and you're probably still going to be using more dice than the Free Peoples anyway. So, as while you're trying to corrupt the ring, the main track that you should be trying to get to 10 victory points, and everyone has their own different strategy. But taking Gondor and taking Rohan is going to get you pretty far along that way. There's 5 in Gondor and another 3 in Rohan, and that way you only need to take 2 more, which could be either one of the Elven territories here. However, if you have cards that allow you to muster troops in Angmar, maybe go ahead and try to take some of the areas here. But for the most part, your path of victory is going to be Gondor and Rohan and one of the Elven territories. The Mouth of Sauron's conditions to come into play is a little bit more strict than any of the other ones. It only takes place when all the Free Peoples are at war, or when Frodo begins his Mordor trek. However, as soon as one of those conditions apply, you definitely want to go ahead and bring him in, because not only do you get an extra die, but he has the ability to change one of your musters into an army. And late in the game, you may need that extra army dice in order to move your troops around. For the dice pool, other than the certain areas where you know they're going to be passing through, I find 2 or 3 dice in the hunt pool to be pretty useful. And ideally, try to have a Nazgûl tracking them in order to get a reroll, and that effectively gives you 1 extra dice. Be wary of the Ents. If Gandalf the White, as long as Gandalf the White is alive, and the 3 Ent cards have not been used, which you definitely want to track, be wary of the Ents. The only conditions that need to apply are Gandalf the White is in play, and a companion is in Fangorn. If Gandalf the White is in Fangorn himself, then both of those conditions are applied and they can go ahead and attack. And not only do they attack, as long as Gandalf is in Fangorn or Rohan, can immediately go ahead and use another card. So if he has both end cards, he may be able to attack twice, or maybe if he is lucky enough and has all 3 end cards saved up, he could attack Isengard multiple times. So keep track if the Ents have been used, if Gandalf the White is alive, and if there's any companion that is within range of getting to Fangorn. You don't want to lose Saruman. You don't want to lose Orthanc. Those are things that you really want to protect. So, ideally, try to kill Gandalf the White. Whenever he is in an army, if he's in Lorien, try to get it under siege and take it and kill him. If he's in Rohan, if he's in Gondor, wherever Gandalf the White is, it's really useful to you to kill him, because not only does it take away some of the best cards that the free people can use against you, it also takes a die against him. So Gandalf the White is your priority of who you should kill, second only to Aragorn. And I think that's the gist of it for the Shadow player. It's a little bit more straightforward than the free people's. You just gotta hammer, and you just gotta move your armies along, utilize the Nazgûl, have them fly around, and try to kill Gandalf and Aragorn, and you're probably gonna end up just fine. And go ahead and write comments about what if you won as a Shadow player. What cities did you focus on? Did you attack these 3 elven areas and maybe the north and the dwarves, and that gave you your victory points? Great. It'll be interesting to see a northern kind of strategy, but most of the games I've played, they've focused on the south until maybe very late in the game. So thank you very much. This game is a lot of fun, and keep on playing. Bye.